And welcome, everyone. Welcome to the second uh, Pride Talks episode. Today, we're going to be chatting with CoziestFox, a fellow member of the Fruity Stream team, to which I'm a part of. Been very excited to chat with Coziest for quite a while. So, my name is Tai
Yeah.
Y. I'm a NB Aero A Spec PhD candidate during the day and content creator on the side. Love doing Acenero, um, advocacy work. I work locally as a co-facilitator for a Acenero support group. Then I recently, in the last year, have had this wonderful opportunity to start the podcast, which has been so much fun. So for folks that are just joining for the first time, the ASPEC podcast series looks at the lived experiences of asexuality and aromanticism with a particular emphasis on intersectional identity and, really emphasizing just how unique and different the experiences under the ace and arrow umbrellas can be. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Without further
Let's
ado,
go.
I'd like to introduce CoziestFox. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure do. Just so excited to get in there. But yeah, thank you for finally having me. I'm Coziest Fox. I go by he, him pronouns. I am a demi-ace. I'm also married. As Ty mentioned, I'm one of the fruities. And I'm generally cozy streamer, and I'm currently on a little narrative game kick, but I enjoy variety, a lot of retro games. I'm quite a Pokemon fan, as you might see my little Bulbasaur down here. But yeah, I am really excited to. I always love to talk about my ACE experiences, so glad to finally be on here.
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to chatting for a while. So, the first question is relates to kind of discovering your own ASPEC identity and how for many folks, including myself, coming to understand that identity can often be really difficult to pinpoint, particularly without some sort of context.
Yeah.
So for you, how easy was it to, come to that realization? What was the journey like for you?
Oh well, this is definitely going to be one of the longer answers that I've got. So we'll feel free to put this back and forth. But it was not very easy for me to realize and come into this identity until it was. Um, that's kind of what it was. Especially as I'm sure we'll talk about later, that so much of the A-spec identity and the spectrum is it's hard to necessarily realize that you're on it because all of the portrayals of media and through our families and just the relationships that we're exposed to really don't teach us the asexual or the aromantic spectrums. So I feel like it's so easy to not understand that that's a possibility for so long. Um, yeah, so it was really not very easy until it was.
Very relatable for sure.
Right. And so a big part of it for me after coming into it was just like it put a lot of the relationships and the interactions that I've had previous to discovering my identity into such a clear perspective. Because I spent so much time of my life. I actually came into the identity around 30, maybe a little bit before, a little after. So definitely a late bloomer to being Demi. But once I did, it just like it really hit me, and it has made me feel so much more comfortable with a lot of my experiences previous.
Absolutely. And I actually myself came to the realization that I was, A spec and aero spec around 30 as well. Uh,
Wow.
so it was around the same time for me. So I can very much relate to that.
Right. And that definitely comes with a lot. Say, there we go. Pixel a very good friend of mine. She also, I've learned, is ace and also in 30s. So maybe that's the time where we really just see it and understand it. Um, yeah, there were
Absolutely.
just so many. Also, for me, my personal story, there were so many little, I won't say roadblocks or bumps, but things that kind of steered me away from exploring that might be my identity. Um, that once I got a clear vision of the fact that it's a spectrum, I was able to pinpoint myself on it, and just everything opened right back up.
Definitely. And I can certainly relate to that being somewhere under the gray umbrella myself on the ACE spectrum and realizing, my experience just isn't really like everybody else, so to speak.
Mhm. Yep.
Something just doesn't
Um,
feel right, but I don't really have the words to explain it.
for sure.
Didn't have
And
that
it
till I was around in my 30s.
and just that switch flips, right? Yeah, but one of my earliest um experiences with hearing that asexuality was a thing, it's now that we're putting in this perspective and looking at it this way, is kind of emblematic of the problem that we have in identifying ourselves. Because the first time that I really heard asexuality in a human term was in high school, maybe even my graduating year. There was a fellow student who was a sex repulsed ace, and I remember overhearing them having a conversation with another class member of mine, and she had been kind of talking to him and like trying to find out like what she could do to like get him interested like in her physically, like really trying to understand. And he's like, nope, like none of that, nothing will like. I do not see that. Like you could not be wearing clothes, and I doesn't matter to me. I don't care. And me, even though I was Demi at the time, not realizing it, I had a little crush on this girl. So like, I was like, I would like to see that. Like, I mean, that would do something for me. So that was such an early experience that I was like, that can't be me. I can't be asexual because he feels that way, and that is not at all how I feel. But that was literally my only frame of reference into the spectrum, and that definitely didn't align with where I am on it.
Absolutely. And, the media representation for so many years has been that sex repulsed ace, and that's the only thing that you ever see represented in many cases in mainstream media. And it makes it very difficult to really see, the fact that it is a spectrum and where do you fall on it can be really difficult to pinpoint until you really start to get into the community and talk to others. And that's what really did it for me. It's
Yeah.
talking to other
Uh-huh.
folks on the ACES and STEM server in particular.
Yeah. And that's exactly the problem, which we're definitely going to be talking more about those sorts of representations and all of that. But the fact that there is really only that one stereotype in media doesn't show us nearly the breadth of where you can fall onto it, and it makes you wonder why you're different, what's wrong with you, because you're not having the same experiences as most of the people around you. So I just chalked it up to, I'm awkward, or I'm not good at this. I don't have any game, but I'm not playing the same game. I'm sitting at a different table. And yeah, it takes a lot to get there. You need to know that that game is available to go sit over there.
Absolutely. And for me, having folks just tell me constantly over and over again, well, you just haven't found the right person, didn't help either. Having that
No.
refrain told me over and over and over again, really kind of just made it difficult to really come to that realization or accept that fact. Hey,
Hmm.
this could, very well be me. And it wasn't until I tried, the typical what people would typically assume to be a relationship with the capital R that I was
Hmm.
like, you know what? this doesn't work for me. This is not, this is not what I'm looking for. This is not me. And it was kind of after that, I was like, wait a minute. And that's when I kind of clued into the fact that, hey, maybe the fact that, I just didn't care about dating pretty much my whole life makes sense now. I definitely think I could be aerospec.
Right, right. Yeah, and that's you have to get there on your own because
Hmm.
nobody is giving you those resources or those representations,
No.
and it's just as important to have those because I very much did the same thing. I did start like traditionally dating, like in high school and stuff. That I mean, it's just it makes me laugh to like look back at those experiences and those moments because just how different it was than anybody else around me. 30s gang, there we go, another one. But I have found myself I guess I'll say allo passing. For most of my life, I've had short relationships. I've had, flings. I've had long-term relationships, and each of them, it never felt exactly right. There was like something that I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. So I would kind of fall into a pattern, maybe of what I expected was correct, but because it didn't necessarily align with my attraction, uh, it never felt right. There was always something missing. Like even I've had multiple really long-term relationships, like 3+ years, and in those, outside of maybe the first year, it was just kind of settling into a relationship that I was. It was maybe obligation, like I was kind of attached, but like not in a way that I was attracted. So it did become more traditionally an asexual relationship because I didn't have the attraction that I was actually looking for. And I still didn't even have the terms for it. I just thought maybe I'm not so into this person or something like, or maybe it's me. But it was.
Absolutely. And with my, the relationship I was referring to, we did this long distance thing for a while, and I always found it more comfortable when we were chatting long distance, and it could be kind of on my terms, and talk to them once in a while kind of thing. And then, when they would come into town, something would just feel really wrong to me, and it didn't feel right.
Hmm.
And I'm like, maybe, this is because what I'm experiencing is a platonic friendship and
Hmm.
nothing more than that. And the whole aspect of romance just felt so uncomfortable for me.
For sure. But I'm sure when you were long
Mm-hmm.
distance and you were talking, that's
Mm-hmm.
very much a friend. So you were
Mm-hmm.
getting what you wanted from that.
Exactly.
That
Exactly.
was serving the need that you were looking for.
Exactly. And it wasn't until after the fact, kind of looking at it retrospectively, all this sort of really started to make sense.
Right. Yeah, that's very relatable. And it's also so this kind of leads into the other speed bump, we'll say, to my journey in realizing my identity is in one of my last really long-term relationships
It's
before I got married,
Pikachu!
because this is now that. But
Fuck!
I was in that for a very long time, and it was just it was going through the motions for a very long time, and it was just I remember specifically um, my partner at the time, because we weren't having like a sexual relationship, even though we were in a romantic relationship for so long. um, she was like, "Are you asexual? Because like that's okay, but if you are," and in my mind, I'm still attracted to people, but like I to be nicer, like I wasn't into her at that point. So I wasn't sexually attracted to her, but I still had like attraction to like other, I don't know, like people or something like, uh, or the desire for that. But it was just, I need emotional attachment
Mm-hmm.
for that sexual attraction. And that had left. So I'm like, how could I be asexual if I want to have sex, just not with you?
Hmm. It can be really confusing at first to figure out, especially under this gray umbrella, just what's going on, and it often takes quite a bit of time to put the pieces together. And for me, I know that finally coming to that realization, having that language, and giving myself permission, hey, I don't have to try to fight this societal pressure to be in a relationship, has made it so much more comfortable. It's been a huge weight off my shoulders, and I've really been able to come into my own as a result.
Right. And that's so important. Um, and then the last part, because we're still on the first question here, which I told you was going to be a long one, but the back and forth is very much part of the journey. But the way that I actually found out that I was on the ACE spectrum, and I've told my wife the story. I retold her today, and she laughs. I found out that I was on the spectrum when I first joined OKCupid. Uh, I did this after my long-term relationship. This was like this was right before I met my wife. So I was like it was like I was 29 years old or something, maybe 30. I don't know. But I'm on OKCupid and I see this person and their orientation says demisexual. And I'm like, what's that mean? So then I looked up online what demisexual means. And I was like, sexual attraction requiring like emotional attachment. And I looked at that and I was like, isn't that everybody? Doesn't everybody require that? And that's when I knew, no, that's a me thing. So that was when I really started the journey and to see where I could fit on the spectrum.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we've talked about this many times on the podcast, just how many misconceptions there are around what demisexuality actually is and what it means, and obviously how difficult it can be to kind of figure out, as we've been chatting about.
Right. Um, because that was my first time learning about this term, which is like integral to my understanding my romantic attraction or sexual attraction to people. My first like the first time I saw this word was on OK Cupid near my 30s. Like that's something wrong with the representation of our identity. Like I really shouldn't be learning how I'm attracted to people from OK Cupid. I don't think that shouldn't be my first uh, exposure to such an accurate word for myself. But that's where we were, and yeah, I was so glad to finally see that, and it really kicked things off for me. And like I said, just that one moment and that realizing, like Pixel says, I'm in this photo and I don't like it. Um, I did like it, but I felt like it felt so weird because the whole world was suddenly like, oh no, I'm not in the whole world. Like it's just me in this room with this identity that I thought everybody had. But it yeah, it kicked off the journey that I'm on now.
Absolutely, absolutely. I use they them pronouns. Warrior for Life 9761 just asked, what are folks' pronouns? So just asking folks if they felt comfortable to let them know.
I certainly do. I'm a he, him,
Absolutely. It's always good to ask if you aren't sure.
of course. Very important.
For
But
both
I
of
think
us,
that yeah.
I
Go
was
ahead.
going to say, I think for both of us, Ace Tumblr wasn't at all a part of my experience in coming to figure out my own identity. That came after me figuring it out.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's why I kind of built up the road to finding the right term. Because I kind of see it now. It's like it's a cube. I may have even seen it as a cube, where the aromanticism and asexuality, where you fit on it, and it's like I have to pinpoint the coordinates of just how I am sexually attracted to somebody and where I want to romantically be. And like I grew up on a spectrum that's like, do you like guys or girls? Like that's what I knew. And then I had, oh, there's asexual, but that's not me because that's like you don't want any of it. But there's it's so broad. Yeah.
Absolutely. The Then, there's the fact that we don't just have romantic and sexual attraction, but we've got aesthetic attraction, tertiary attraction, and a whole bunch of others that people don't normally think about. And it tends to be the aces and arrows that are like, hey, these are actually a thing and you should think about them.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And I definitely I have more that I'll say about that later, because it ties into some of the other stuff. But it is really, I think, important for not just us to understand our identity, because I feel like there are elements of it that are very helpful to those who have
Mm.
allosexual identities.
Absolutely. A lot of this is valid for allo or, asexual folks.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
And I love Pixel. We're Baskin Robbins situation, and the flavors are limitless.
Yeah. The whole ace cake meme, the ace
Hmm.
garlic bread.
Yep. We have a whole shop of treats.
Hmm. So asexuality is often called the invisible orientation, a phrase coined by Julia Sandra Decker in 2014. I would also argue that, we can find parallel challenges for aromanticism in many ways as well. Um, However, we'll focus on asexuality here. Erasure of asexuality is unfortunately incredibly common. Obviously, the amount of erasure that the demi label gets is absolutely disgusting. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, it's so hard to find aspec focused communities. I half joke, but also am quite serious when I say, how does one find an ace in the wild?
Yeah, I don't know.
Very
Unless we're
difficult.
carrying flags, yeah.
Yeah, and like unless you're carrying a flag, exactly. And as we kind of alluded to before, media representation is often limited to the sex repulse ace who doesn't want any sex at all, has never had sex, and um, aromanticism, if it's depicted at all, often comes in the form of very one-dimensional aro ace characters who are devoid of emotion and depicted as
Mhm.
antisocial. How do you find
Right.
yourself when that's the only representation, if any, that exists out there?
Yeah. And that's so difficult, and that's why so many of us, it seems, discovered this so late in our lives. Because hopefully, I'm hoping more, and I know that there are more representations nowadays, but like for us, there wasn't, and that's why it took us so long to get here. And I do want to say that the community that I'm in now, like you, the Fruities, Ghostline, Zelmo, Pixel, like coming into seeing all of these Ace individuals and how they experience the world has been ever so helpful. And to the point where you say, how do you find an Ace in the wild? My strategy tends to be if I walk into a room and I see people that look like they're, you know, aligned with me, I'll be like, I'm asexual. I'm ace. Like that's the only way. Because if there's another one in the room, they'll be like, oh, I'm ace too, and they'll
Hmm.
come over because it's so rare to find us. But that's the only way
Absolutely.
that I've found.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I very much similarly will do the same.
Yeah,
I've had
and that's
the. Sorry?
no, go ahead.
I was going to say, I've had the incredible opportunity to, obviously be a part of the Fruities and meet so many wonderful ace folks through the Fruities, but also here locally through the organization that I run. Initially, the Ace and Arrow group that I'm a part of started as a independent kind of social group, and then joined on with the organization which I'm now working for, who absorbed the group and said, "Hey, yeah, we don't have anything for Ace and Arrow folks. We would absolutely love to start a Ace and Arrow support group." And that's how that became a thing. And then
Right.
I've come to be a part of two different Ace and Arrow communities in the Toronto area as well. So I'm very blessed, and I understand that that's not the norm for most people, unfortunately. It's
No,
often really
definitely
hard
not
to
around
find
here.
Ace and Arrow communities.
Yeah. And I also, Kana, didn't mean to forget about Kana, but yeah, do you like Pokemon Conquest? That was that was how we found out
Mood.
that we shared that we shared that identity.
Absolutely.
But yeah, there are not communities like that around where I live, and maybe that's an opportunity for me to try and get one together. But
Hmm.
yeah, to just I didn't mean to sidetrack us from the erasure of the ace in like media and all of that, because that's so important. And like we were talking about the spectrum, and again, I'll say like the 3D spectrum, our whole, all of the treats that we have, all of the different things, like it's just so complex and unique to each person. I feel, because even people that I share an identity very closely, if they're other demisexuals and stuff, don't necessarily fit. They're not, I don't know a better term, but they're not as demi as me, or maybe they are also aromantic. Like and it's down to each individual, and also how far they are on those spectrums. So I can kind of empathize that it might be difficult to make a vast array of those characters on a TV show or something, but that doesn't mean that there should be none of them. There is plenty, and I feel like it's kind of a missed opportunity, because just how unique experiences can be, how much depth it can add to a character, and like how, as we said, applicable it is to people who may not necessarily be on our spectrum. There is still stuff to learn about their own orientation from those of us who do fall on this spectrum.
Absolutely. And Kana brought up a really good point. The fact that, and we've talked about this before on, the podcast in different
Mhm.
ways, but the fact that, there's this refrain that some, folks in the queer community don't see ace folks as queer enough. And that's a
Mhm.
very common, unfortunate form of erasure that the ace community faces.
Yeah, and that I understand that truly, both in how it affected me learning of it, because the relationships and stuff I had up until this point, people could see me and be like, "You've had all of these relationships, you've had sexual experiences, so why are you trying to do this?" Like, it it never really comes from a place of understanding, I think, from that, because they're like, I see you in a relationship, it's just like my relationship. So are you just trying to get attention? Like, are you just trying to be unique? But it's not. It's the way that I find myself in that is so unique and so different, and I need to understand. Like, it's
Hmm.
important to me to be able to function in these relationships to truly understand. But um I feel like everybody who is not on the spectrum has like a little foam bat that they're just like, they see us in a relationship and they're just pushing us back into the aloe corner or something, like, see, you're in a relationship, you're one of us. And that's not helpful.
No. And the fact that what may look like a quote typical allo romantic relationship may not be any of that in reality. It could be a queer platonic relationship, and they're just making that assumption. And that's something that is really, really problematic.
For sure. um and I think one of those aspects um that helps lead into why there is the erasure of us in these sorts of in media portrayals and everything is apparently, pushing someone against the wall and like just making out with them and doing all that. It makes for better TV apparently than like genuinely developing feelings for somebody as a demi. That's the experience that I can talk from. Like
Mm-hmm.
that takes more nuance
Mm-hmm.
development to actually create that. I think makes it better, but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't make for as good of TV as they seem to want to portray.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, one of the things I've, come to sort of think about a fair bit is why isn't there demi representation in the media? And, many of folks have kind of said to the outsider, a demi experience could just be somebody waiting to have sex. That's not at all what it is, but to the outsider who doesn't have any understanding of the nuance of what it actually means to be demi, how do you portray this in a TV series without going into the nuances of demisexuality to an audience that's
It,
maybe never heard of it?
right. And I think that is actually, it kind of inspired an idea to me for how to portray a character like that. It might be a better relatable way to portray demisexual attraction by portraying a character that is falling out of love and out of attraction with
Really good
somebody,
point.
because the way that develops and changes a relationship um, is much different, I would think, and
Hmm.
could show exactly like the point that is coming from, which is uniquely different. It's We're not seeing a really attractive person in a bar and being like, I want them, forget my girlfriend. It is because when we're in love, when we're attracted to somebody, that's what we want. We can't just find that in somebody at a bar. We will stick with that, but falling out of that attraction
Hmm.
is now I'm talking like I've thought about this before, but no, what you were just saying, inspired like that, I think is a great and accurate way to perhaps more accurately describe the demi experience.
Absolutely. It's such a great point. I had not even considered that. That is an absolutely fantastic point. And uh, I I'm definitely going to have to bring that up when as a suggestion to folks when people talk about how do you portray the demi experience. That's such a good point.
And I'll just say that I
It's
know that because
Pikachu!
that is my experience. I have been there. I
Mm,
have, gone through multiple instances of that. So like it now I know,
mm-hmm,
looking in retrospect, that is what confirmed it. I could
mm.
see why and when and how that changed my relationship. And great, let's produce a show. Let's go.
Exactly. And Duke popping off with another gift sub to Chris Hangry, who appeared in episode
Mm,
11 when we were chatting
heck
about
yeah.
compulsory sexuality.
And the love at first sight. Exactly. That's
Mm,
that's the push against the wall thing that I was saying before. Like that.
mm-hmm,
Ooh, so much more interesting. It's now.
mm-hmm. And
Who's that Pokemon?
it's Pikachu!
It's
Duke,
Clefairy!
thank you so much. I was just gonna bring up Chris Hangry's point about the argument that we're just trying to get attention is so obnoxious
Mhm.
because if being socially ostracized is the result of identifying as ace, isn't that a form of erasure? And
Right.
two, why would we absolutely want to go out of our way to experience that if we were just trying to get attention?
Right.
Doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't. But that shows just how little understanding that there is of even the very basics of our spectrum.
Absolutely. So I think we've
Um,
talked a lot about this already. Asexuality is often greatly misunderstood. What are some of the most
mhm.
frustrating misconceptions that you've experienced?
So I like I just said, leading perfectly into this is I think it's just the general lack of understanding of any part of the spectrum is really the root of it all. But it is so relatable because the what it can create is relatable to other like allosexuals and other people on the spectrum. It's just like the hooks for attraction are just like they're different. It's not that we don't have them, um, but it's different. And even if I can't speak to it as my experience, like as a asexual, a romantic individual, like I can't speak to that, but I there is still something that a person who is asexual and aromantic is looking for in a relationship. I was talking to my wife about this in the car. Um, it's not that an asexual and aromantic person just doesn't want relationships with people. They're just not looking for romantic or sexual interactions with people. That doesn't mean that they don't want relationships. It's just we think attraction, because of portrayals and misunderstandings about these spectrums, attraction must mean you want sex and you want to marry and live with this person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's inaccurate.
And that's the only valid way to be in a relationship. And
Right.
that's the end desire of everybody. It's
Right.
so problematic to have that perspective.
Yeah. And also to to talk about how frustrating it is um, to have maybe a lack of representation for characters like on the demi spectrum or something is to again point out something that it isn't. So I love Final Fantasy games; they're great. Um, one character in particular that I think of is Final Fantasy IX. Zidane, the main character, he is very much a womanizer. Very much, anytime he sees a female character, he's like, "Ooh, how can I get at her?" And it's portrayed as obnoxious. It's obnoxiously so. People like, spurn his advances and everything, but it's like that that is an allosexual person who is just looking for just sex from anybody or just to get close to them. Isn't that like why is that a more positive representation than a person like me who is like I deeply respect this person and care for them as an individual. I think I would like to take them into my life and hold them close, maybe develop a sexual relation. Like one of those to me obviously feels like a more healthy relationship and style to portray, but it's just so common to have a character that's a guy who's just like I just want sex from this person, let's go. Like the womanizer stereotype is so accepted, even though it's like why is that more attractive than an
Yeah,
accurately portrayed demi character?
absolutely. Such a good point. And it's definitely frustrating to see those characters all over the place and not have any other representation.
Right.
And
um
the arrow ace that's cold and devoid of emotion.
right.
It's not
uh
just that you don't want to be in a relationship. I have, as somebody that's arrow ace spec, I have so many chronic relationships I've developed with so many folks across the community. I feel the most happy I've ever been as a result.
mm, great.
And I could see myself in a queer platonic relationship, with some degree of emotional closeness. I just don't want the romantic aspects of that.
Right. And that's entirely valid, and that's just as like healthy a relationship as one that ends in a traditional marriage. Like it's and that is what is most frustrating, is not necessarily accurate portrayals or a lack of portrayals. It's just that like these things that we feel are unique and draw us more towards a certain relationship that becomes so clear to us as we understand these methods of attraction, that we hone what we want from a relationship compared to a traditional experience, which is like, you need to marry somebody that you could probably have sex with for the rest of your life and that you could probably get along with. Like, that's what you should go for. Just like somebody who kind of aligns with you. Uh, and that's that. But like, you, when you have somebody that is meeting the exact needs that you want from a relationship, whether it is a queer platonic relationship or a demisexual one, it it is specifying what I want from the relationship, not what I want the person to look like. I'm not like, I would really be emotionally attached to a blonde woman. Like, that's not important. What is to me is a person that will like understand and care for me as like a person, and that I can return that, and that creates the attraction. But um the typical thing that we're supposed to see is just like, what's your type, what's your type of person, because that is such a surefire way to find a lifelong partner.
So true. Uh,
And a part of that, which I have also found interesting in my journey of learning about demisexuality and how it is a part of my identity, is in instances, it's not that I can't just see a person or talk to a person and immediately be attracted to him, because I can. I have like my wife, the first time that I saw her, meeting her off of OkCupid, I felt an immediate attraction. It it comes from a different place though. I wasn't like, ooh, look at her body and she has this hair that I want. It's not that. It's, to me, in the way that I am attracted, it is like a trait that that person has, or maybe a vibe that I can just feel that relates to maybe a character that I feel attached to or trusting of, or a person that I may have known, and not necessarily in a relationship sense, but that there is something about like a person that I can like trust or feel safe with. And I don't know this person, but I can see them, and I'm like, ooh, that person reminds me of like Aerith from Final Fantasy. Like, I'm sure they're a really nice person, and they're this, and like I can grab onto that, but I can't grab onto like, ooh, she's looking fine. Like that doesn't do anything to me. But if I'm like, this person really seems like a great person, that's how I know I'm Demi.
absolutely. Really great way of explaining it as well, for
Oh,
sure.
thank you.
Wanting to just catch up with what a couple of folks have had said in
Of
the
course.
chat here. Chris Hangry mentioned around conceptions is, as they've opened up as Arrow Ace, exactly what you said. People often think that you just don't want to be
Hmm.
in a relationship. The
Mhm.
reality is nobody wants to be alone. Nobody is that cold, devoid of emotion character that the media presents as the Arrow Ace. That's not at all what it's about.
Right.
It's just that the big, unfortunately, this whatever misconception there is, the idea that somebody can't be, that they can't have, romantic attraction or this desire for a sexual relationship is so foreign to them. And welcome on
Right.
in, Raiders. Thank you so much for the raid,
Let's go.
Oni TV. Also, huge congratulations on making it to affiliate. Huge
Ooh, heck yeah.
congratulations. Let me give you a shout out. Thank you so much for the raid, Oni. Good to see you. How are you doing today?
Who's that Pokemon?
It's Pikachu!
It's Clefairy!
Fuck!
Well,
And
welcome.
what were you
Thanks
up
for the
to?
raid.
What were you playing, Oni? Thank you so much for the gift sub to Oni, by the way, Duke. Looks like you were playing Ratchet and Clank. How was it? And also, as I like to say, IRL always comes before URL. If you need to raid and run, absolutely understand. You've probably been streaming a while. You need to get up and stretch. That's perfectly okay. I'm here for that. So please, please take that time for self-care. Oh no. Oh no. Lost the race. Paw Patrol ground. That's amazing. I love it. I think I remember Raven mentioning that the loser was going to have to play Paw Patrol Grand Prix. That's amazing. Oh no. I'm sorry, Oni. I will have to go back and watch the VOD and just see how awful this game is. uh, and apologies for scaring folks with the train sound. I'm gonna have to turn that down a bit. I had it as a raid train alert, and then I just never changed it. Because I just keep getting into more and more raid trains. I'm actually going to be a part of a mental health raid train coming up next week, so...
Who's that Pokemon?
It's Pikachu!
Thank you for the gift sub to Raven, Duke! Thank you so much, Duke. Duke topping off again.
Let's go.
So we were talking about this idea that Airways folks are cold comes from this absolute lack of understanding how anybody could possibly not want what society is supposedly looking for. And that just seems so foreign to them that you must be alien or something if you don't experience that. That must be where that kind of comes from, and as a result, it's portrayed in a really horrible way.
And I think that kind of hooks back to what Duke said a little bit ago about thinking that being sex averse was a deal breaker. And that most likely comes from a place that there are not positive representations of sex repulsed people in media. So that if that is the only representation to other people, you must think, well, they're going to assume that I'm unattractive because of this, so I'm just not even going to try. But if there was actual healthy like representations of that, then people would be like, oh, I can get my needs met in a relationship with a person who's sex averse because I also don't care too much, or I could find like there are ways, and you're missing out on that kind of thing.
Absolutely. So true. Thanks for catching that. I apologize, Duke, that I missed that comment. So thank you for catching that.
No, of course. Yeah, I'm reading all of the comments, but there's so much
so
to
many,
say.
yeah.
And all of these experiences and things
Absolutely.
they're so valid, so relatable.
Absolutely. And that's what I want to see. I want to see, share that, hey, not everybody's experience under the umbrella is going to be the same. And that's really important. We tend to only see a very few limited representations in the media, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah, and I those representations are like we keep alluding to the fact that even people who aren't necessarily on the spectrum have a lot to gain from understanding our perspective on attraction. And I feel like a lot of the time, especially as a demi, I feel like allosexuals are on the cusp of understanding because they're like, I just want to be with somebody who's my best friend. And that's not, you're not looking like, you're not just looking for a sexual attraction and then somebody that makes you laugh. Like that's the core of demisexuality. Like you understand, you want somebody that you truly appreciate, and then you are also going to have like a good sexual relationship with them. And I'm gonna just go off on a limb and say a better sexual relationship than you would have with somebody that you met only because you were sexually attracted to them. Because like there's a core of all of this kind of attraction in allosexuality, but like I can speak from that demi lens that like when I hear somebody say, I just want to be married to my best friend, I'm like, yeah,
Hell
you
yeah.
do. I know that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Totally.
Oh. Mr. Spachemin, preach cozy. That is my lovely wife.
Welcome on in. Good to have you.
Uh, so yeah, I definitely have that attraction to her. But I think there are questions later on that I can speak more to that. But yeah,
Absolutely.
that's one of the more frustrating things as well. Is there's so much to gain from deeper understandings of our spectrum, even for people who don't necessarily identify on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I love to bring up, just to challenge people's perception of what a relationship is and how this kind of framework can be useful for anyone, is the idea of relationship anarchy. And we talked about this in episode
Hmm.
16. Even if you don't practice relationship anarchy, I bet you there's some aspects of it that can be really helpful in creating a relationship that's the best one for you. In that,
Right.
it really pushes and really highlights the importance of communication. It highlights the fact that you shouldn't be defining what your relationship is based on what society tells you it to be.
Hmm.
You should define that relationship with the partner or partners whom you are in that relationship with. That's who matters the most.
Right. And that's exactly it. Not no, I know I've heard you discuss it and mention it, and I would definitely love I know a book or something, a recommendation about it. But I think that is a very important aspect of it is communication, all of that. That like it's truly getting to know the people that you are getting into these relationships with and what you want, communicating that, and what they want and communicating that. And that way I feel like you are going to continue to have and develop that relationship in a way that is healthy and long lasting.
Mm-hmm.
And that was to talk about my wonderful wife as well, was one of in our earliest conversation, our very first talk in the bar. We were talking about how we really had been like learning more about ourselves, developing that kind of thing, and how we were looking for a partner that didn't put us in a box. And that is a very relatable thing to say, but it is much deeper than that because um, if you are attracted to somebody, the way that they are talking, the things that they are saying, and the way that they look the first time you meet them, none of those things are going to be the same as you continue to live your life with them. At least one of those aspects is definitely going to change. More than likely, all of them are. But if you are continuously communicating as you develop yourself and the other person develops, you can appreciate how they are growing, how you are growing, and how you feel that way. And need be evaluate the relationship. But I definitely feel like with that open communication about yourself, your partner, and the relationship, that you are more than guaranteeing success to get what you want out of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, so true. And that's why, meaningful, regular communication is something that all relationships, no matter what they are, should have.
Hmm.
Doesn't just have to
Exactly.
be romantic, it can be queer platonic. Even, healthy friendships require communication about, boundaries about what you expect. They look
Yeah,
different than in a romantic relationship, but communication's just as important.
exactly. And that's where an identity like yours has such value to an allosexual, even a demisexual like me, in understanding how I have a relationship with my best friends. Like, I do not want a relationship with my best friend Ryan to become sexual. I do not want it to become romantic, but I want it to be a successful and rewarding relationship. That I have things
Mm.
to learn from asexual and aromantic people about that relationship. That is what you
Mm-hmm.
want. You
Mm-hmm.
want a relationship. I want that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and communication is definitely a big part of that, but that's,
Absolutely.
yeah, applicable.
So I posted in the chat a link to Andy Norgren's
Oh,
blog where the term relationship anarchy was coined in 2009. So I love bringing this up anytime we kind of talk about, the importance of communication. And it has 9 tenets. You can read about them there. And there's a really good video actually on YouTube that I linked in episode 17 in the description on the YouTube channel, which does an absolute fantastic job breaking down the differences between polyamory, relationship anarchy, and queer platonic relationships, and the Venn diagram between the three of them. There is overlap between the three.
right. Yeah, I will
So,
definitely dive into that.
so if you check out the ASPEC podcast YouTube and go to episode 17, I should grab that. Why don't I just do that right now while we have a moment here? Uh, there's a really good YouTube episode that does a great job of covering that.
Right.
And I think does a far better job than I ever could personally. Because they've actually had I think that particular um, content creator actually has a background in uh, sort of queer relationships and has done research on it. So, like, they're
Right.
getting the authoritative perspective for sure. So let me just grab that right now. So
Just
we
take a
do have
moment
an
to say
ad
you
break.
do a great job too.
Thank you. We do have an ad break coming up in about 2 minutes here. Do you want to, take a little bit of a break, step away, have a stretch break before we kind of delve into what your favorite media representation looks like?
Yeah, sure. A short little break.
Thanks for the hydrate reminder. I do need to get some more water. So we
Thank you for
are
that.
going to swap on over to the BRB screen and then come back in about 5 or so minutes. I'll answer that before we jump over. Yeah, the last episode in which I responded to the question on the difference between platonic and queer platonic relationships. Yeah, the one with Glass's journal, exactly. So we'll swap over to BRB, and I'll see you in about 5 minutes.
All right.
Welcome back, folks. Thanks for sticking around through the ads. I posted a couple of things in the chat there, some information about, relationship anarchy, as well as a video by Megan Sandor, which really I think does a great job at describing, the differences and similarities between polyamory, relationship anarchy, and queer platonic relationships, and just why the ace and arrow community has so much overlap with all three of those. And thank you again for the gift subs, Duke. You are always way too kind on these podcast episodes.
I was just saying, Duke, how I'm not seeing the ads. I don't understand. I thought they're still going, but then I realized I'm now subbed.
Yep, that would be why. uh, what? I think Duke was asking when's your next stream. I think you did a Cult of the Lamb episode.
I did that a while ago. Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I responded in text
Okay.
and
There we
said
go.
my next one will be Monday at 4 is when I'll be on, and I'll be playing The Wolf Among Us. I'm on a narrative journey right now.
Heck yeah. That sounds like should be a fun time.
Oh yeah.
so we've kind of been chatting a little bit about media. Do you have any media representations that you can recall that are okay enough, or that would be, quote, your favorite of the limited selection that there are?
Uh, so there, this was definitely a hard question for me to think about because there are so few, and I don't want to just say this character or this thing because it's the only one that exists. So
Mm-hmm.
I do have a couple of answers and some more amusing than others. But the first thing that I want to bring up is I think Bomberman as a character might be asexual. And I think that because I was playing Bomberman Quest, I was streaming it a couple of months ago. And I think it's I don't know, it's a Game Boy game or a Game Boy Color game. I don't remember, but it's kind of like a light action RPG-ish, not really action RPG. It's Bomberman, but like with a story and progression. And in one instance, there is a female character who's like coming on real hard to Bomberman. Like, ooh, don't you want to like do this? Or like, aren't I pretty? And his response is just dot, 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 whatever. And it's like, yeah, see, he's not falling for the charms. So I think Bomberman might be asexual. If he is, great, and I love it. But that was one of my favorite little snippets from a game that I was like, oh my god, is he ace? And that shows just how little representation there is when I have to read into that. But I love that, and I definitely have a screenshot of it because one of my favorite moments in gaming.
Absolutely. Believe it or not, I don't think you are the first person to bring up Bomberman. I
Oh, let's
can't
go.
recall when or where I heard it, but I do recall somebody saying, something along a similar lines that, that Bomberman could very well be asexual. I just can't recall where
Right.
I heard it. So that definitely, you aren't the first person to say that.
Yeah. Dada, to answer your question, I was playing it, I was streaming it for the first time, and that was as a streamer is kind of when I've learned my identity. So I saw it, and yes, I got very excited to think that it was this.
Mm.
And to your point, Ty, it is interesting because I needed that context to see Bomberman as an ace character because there are plenty of games or shooters, like things like that, that don't have any like there's no romantic opportunity there. So you can't really say. Like I could say that a character like a Call of Duty protagonist could be asexual because you don't see them engaging in anything that is like a sexual attraction. That's kind of wishy-washy. But like
Hmm.
in this specific game, there was a woman who was trying to hit on Bomberman, and he seemed completely unfazed. So that's when I was like, oh, you know what? Maybe.
Very good
And I just,
point.
yeah.
I know many people have for years said, that they believe Link is very much
Mm. Mm-hmm.
ace and most likely arrow ace. I don't know necessarily because the Link character that most people refer to is the young Link in
Mm-hmm.
Ocarina of Time, and
Mm-hmm.
would be far too young to really have any idea of
Mm-hmm.
their orientation.
And I love bringing up that character because that is also, which is one of my favorite scenes in gaming, is in Ocarina of Time very early on when you're leaving the village. Saria is what I call her. I don't know if her name's Sorry. I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce it because it's always in my head. But she's seeing you off on the bridge, and you're like talking to her, and then she says something, and Link just looks a little shocked, takes a couple steps back, and then just runs.
Runs,
And I'm
yeah,
like, there you go.
exactly.
Yep, it's one of my favorite moments.
It's great.
And maybe he felt like romantic repulsion in that sense, was like, oh no, is she gonna try and kiss me, let's leave.
Hmm.
And I can relate to that. It's like somebody that I'm not attracted to and being like, are they romantically attracted to me, because I'm not getting that vibe, and I gotta just like leave, I think, because that's the only way that I can navigate the situation.
So yeah, Link is
Uh,
obviously brought up quite often in the gaming world as
mhm.
the quintessential, I guess, arrow ace character in video games, I
Right,
guess. But, you know, I could make the
right,
argument that most people are thinking of that very scene. But how old
right.
is Link in that scene, actually,
Yeah,
canonically?
right.
I don't
Um,
know the answer
and
off the top of my head.
right. And that also kind of speaks to a dimension of this representation of ace characters in media and games is uh, it should be entirely normal for us to explore these characters' stories without romance and sex even being a dimension. Like
Hmm.
Link's journey as a hero is complete, exciting, and intriguing without having to wonder if he is attracted to Saria or Zelda or anybody. But the the amount of times in games and media where you just have to, there's a female character, they have to be attracted to the guy, like they have to, because we need this dimension of sexual attraction and representation. But you don't need that for stories to be
No,
exciting. Like anytime I'm watching a show and there is a scene where they start making out and kissing and heading towards the bedroom, I'm like, what does this have to do with a zombie apocalypse?
right?
Like why? uh
Exactly.
and that's what makes it so exciting when in a game like Zelda, just the absence of that, which should be completely normal, shows us that maybe he is ace. Like just because they don't have that, and it's wild.
Absolutely. The gratuitous sex scenes just for the sake of it. Absolutely. If it's
Hmm.
inherently there and it adds value, sure. But if it's just
Hmm.
gratuitously there and doesn't really add to the plot, why? Why do you bother with it? I mean, I
Yeah,
understand why compulsory sexuality and all that, but it
yeah,
is
right.
it is frustrating for sure.
And that is I agree with Emma and Java there. But yeah, it's just like we were saying earlier, it's so much harder to develop like the demi attraction and stuff as an accurate representation, and especially with the need for shows to feel like it's gotta happen. There's got to be a spark. We got to keep going because we need to keep the audience's attention. So here's some kissing. Now you're back. Like
Hmm.
eh, it's
Hmm.
unnecessary feeling incredibly. Um, and so this was another because I was again trying to look at this representation in a different lens, and the other another example that I came up with was Lord of the Rings. There are plenty of romantic stories in that. There is plenty of romance, but there are definitely characters who are doing extraordinary things and don't need to like worry or think about like any of that. A lot of them become married. Like Samwise, he at the end, like he has his goal. He's attracted, but he's not like thinking and wondering, and he's able to like do things throughout. And I appreciate those stories because it doesn't necessarily have to focus those sorts of stories like the attraction and all of that. Like at the end you do see like here are relationships, here are things, but like we don't need to see that throughout for the journey to be complete, engaging, and exciting. We don't need like any of that to tell these stories. But I don't know, am I weird for seeing that? Right.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly 100% agree with you, that not every story has to involve sex and romance to be a fulfilling story that, brings excitement and, a complete story. I am completely
Hmm.
on board with that one for sure.
And then this is the other one that I really enjoyed. Is my wife and I, as we're tired at the end of the day, we'll watch some trash TV, and that includes dating shows like Married at First Sight. If you're not familiar with that, or anybody in chat isn't, it's a show where experts match people, and then they literally meet each other at the marriage altar, and then they go through a couple of months where they're like in a marriage and they're receiving basic counseling from these experts, and they're constantly talking about their feelings, about their relationship, and a lot of the times these things aren't working out. But as a demisexual person watching this, I can clearly identify, because one of the big sticking points in some of the relationships that you see on this show are like, well, have you guys had sex yet? And they can be like a month or two into their relationship and they're like, no, I haven't. And sometimes you can see like one person's not attracted to the other, sometimes this. But then other times somebody like might be wanting it and like another person will be like, well, you keep asking me about these things, or you keep like you keep putting a lot of pressure on it, or you keep fighting with me about little things, and so like I can't think about having sex with you. And I very much relate to that, because it's, if a person is forcing you into those kind of situations and stuff because that's normal to them, but it's not as a demisexual person, like you need to develop the emotional attraction in all of that, and then becomes so built up and so much a thing, that I see and really empathize with the way that they sometimes shut down because they don't have a chance at that emotional attraction. But the allosexual person in the relationship needs that sexual attract, or like needs to have sex, but they can't get the other person there because of just the setup of everything. It's not really conducive towards developing a relationship in a way that's healthy to a demisexual, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I mean, the whole idea of being set up with somebody at a marriage altar by, an so-called expert just feels
Right.
so wrong to me.
Yeah. Right. But it it's portrayed as normal. And also when there are these people or characters, nobody talks about it. Nobody references that maybe they need like deep emotional attraction. Like the experts will be like, well, why don't you have sex? Here is a box of like toys and stuff to get you in the mood. Like that's not what they're missing. I can tell you this is
Mm-mm.
not what they're missing.
Mm-mm.
And it's very silly to use reality TV in that way.
Absolutely. No, great
But
point.
I can definitely see them.
Absolutely great point. I'm glad you brought it up. I actually didn't even know that TV show existed. I'm a little,
Mm,
I'm a little out of touch with a lot of TV series because I don't currently have access to any of the streaming platforms. So
mhm.
I basically either just spend my time on Twitch or I'm out at like, various support groups.
I mean, I wouldn't say you're missing out. I would much rather be spending my time on Twitter and support groups, but it's just easy to
Yeah,
tune out to that
absolutely.
sometimes.
There are definitely some nights where I'm like, you know what, I could just turn my brain off and watch something for sure.
Right,
I can certainly, relate to wanting that opportunity at some point.
right. But those are the examples that I came
Hmm.
up with
Absolutely.
outside of the normal ones.
No, great suggestion. Java for Jock mentioned reality TV makes people believe that sex is
Mhm.
absolute make or break in relationships when it isn't necessarily, and it shouldn't be.
Right. The communication around sex is
Hmm.
what is important.
Hmm.
If one person requires it and another person doesn't, you can navigate that, especially if there are
Absolutely.
other things that you are getting in the relationship. But it's not, you must be having sex all the time, is what media tells us. But like, no, it's communicating and meeting your needs, both of your needs, in relation to that
Yeah.
is what's important.
And Sharonda J. Brown does a really good job at breaking all this down and really delving into the details of just how toxic and problematic this theme of compulsory sexuality is, and just how pervasive it is everywhere around us, and how it's also used as a tool of oppression. So, if
Right.
anybody wants to really delve into the details of compulsory sexuality, which is the idea that, you know, everybody desires sex and therefore it's basically included in every single piece of media. It's in TV advertisements. And the idea that if you don't desire it, then, well, who are you? I highly recommend the book by Sharonda J. Brown. It's I linked it in the last episode. Sharonda J. Brown, refusing the short title. If you look up Sharonda J. Brown, refusing compulsory sexuality, you should be able to find it quite easily.
Great. Yeah,
The
and
law.
that's definitely an aspect that we're not really talking directly about or anything, but the way that it is used to influence, coerce relationships, especially I think we've probably had experiences in that. I've definitely had experiences where it or the lack of it was used as a tool of control. And when I'm not seeing it the same way as somebody else, um, but I see the need and the obligation to it from things like media. It makes it immediately puts me kind of in the wrong and at the disadvantage that I am the one that has the problem and I am the one that needs to do something about it when that's terribly inaccurate.
Exactly. Do you have any favorite books on around asexuality or aspec identity?
So I'm typically a very slow reader, so I don't know many. And I would definitely love more books to actually read about it. I know Ghostline had she had been reading a little bit of one, or she recommended one on her stream way back when, and I know there's plenty of them, but I don't actually have much experiences
That's
with them.
perfectly okay. And we've talked about a few different ones, Sharonda J. Brown. Then there's, Cody Diagonal-Oriens, aka Astat Advice, has a couple that are kind of good if you want the 101s of asexuality and aromanticism. Ace by
Mhm.
Angela Chen is also great as kind of an overview, really looking at just a diverse range of experiences. I actually found out about one recently, which looks, it really gives a intersectional perspective on asexuality. I linked it in the last episode in the description. So if you go back to that, there's a few books that I would
Right,
recommend checking out.
definitely.
Description.
Uh, and uh, both Angry and Duke,
Yeah.
those are fantastic points.
Yeah.
Um, uh,
Absolutely.
I think importantly, Duke pointing out, like allosexual folks, and experiencing all those types of attraction, but also being sex averse and not experiencing attraction. That also that is very much a thing too. Like you could feel all of these things, but it doesn't mean you need to do that or commit to anything or whatnot. At least it shouldn't be that way, but we're definitely taught that if you feel those attractions, then you must pursue them. You must be the aggressor, to tie it into what Hangry Chris is saying. And that's just because there's not enough representation and knowledge about just what that should actually mean or how that should actually um, exist.
Exactly. And the obviously the medicalization of asexuality and the fact that if you don't experience sexual attraction, then you're somehow, you need to get your hormones checked. That is disgusting and
Right.
unfortunately very problematic uh, misunderstanding that continues to happen in the medical community. And I
Right.
mentioned one time to a medical provider that, hey, I'm ace. What did I find written in my chart? You guess it.
Mm.
Um, Sexual impotence, basically. And it's like,
Yeah, right.
why?
That's not what I'm saying, but okay.
No. we talked about that in quite a bit of detail with a couple of folks from the Aces and STEM Discord earlier on in the podcast, where we really talked about the problematic assumptions in the medical community and how we really need to, there's a lot that needs to be done to get the medical community to better understand asexuality.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and that's just part of the larger discussion of where exactly the medical community is focused. Straight white males are what everything is based off of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
unfortunate.
there's a lot more to explore.
Absolutely. So we've talked, I think we've kind of already talked about, allonormativity certainly a fair bit throughout the podcast so far. We haven't used that term, so I will briefly define it here. So allonormativity is the assumption that everybody is allosexual, i.e., that they experience a sexual attraction, and the related assumption that everybody desires to be in a sexual relationship. That is not the case for everybody, but it's a widespread assumption that drives the compulsory sexuality, unfortunately, and unfortunately leads to a lot of problematic misunderstandings around what around asexuality. And we've definitely talked about this in various aspects throughout the podcast today, but we didn't put a name to it. So allonormativity, huge problem. So is amatonormativity. So this is the assumption that everybody desires to be in a coupled romantic monogamous relationship. For folks like myself, I don't desire to be in a coupled romantic monogamous relationship. That is not something that is at all what I desire. It's not on my radar. But I do desire emotional closeness. That's why a QPR structure sounds amazing to me.
Right. Yeah, and both of those terms and concepts are so I feel them so much, especially as a married demisexual. Because you if you didn't understand like where I am on this spectrum, and if you didn't understand demisexuality and asexuality, you would look at my relationship and be like, "You're married to somebody. You're very much in love. I can tell you're attracted to her. So again, what what's the deal? Why are you labeling yourself? Why are you unique? And me and my marriage are just allo or whatnot." And that it is almost ironic. It is ironic for me that I believed that I wanted and was all of those things for so long, because that's what we're exposed to, that's what we're taught. And then as I was in relationships that weren't working because they weren't meeting my attraction needs and just my basic needs for like what I wanted in romance and everything, then I was like, I don't want a coupled monogamous relationship. I definitely don't want a marriage. And then right after I learned what demisexual was and that I'm very much that, right after that, I met my now wife. And very shortly after starting to date her, we got married, because it was just like, no, this works. This is what it's supposed to be. This meets all my needs. Well, here we go. Like, and it feels like, then how does any of that make sense? But like, I needed to understand how attraction works for myself, and luckily for me it was immediate in the results. But yeah, I could see how anybody who doesn't understand this or doesn't relate to this could be like, why are you making this a thing? um but yeah, it was just such a roller coaster. And I didn't think I wanted that, and then I found myself in it. But I think I'm in a successful and happy marriage because I understand this attraction.
Totally. Absolutely. And Hugster Duke brought up a really good point, saying, I wish they'd teach aesthetic attraction, because for many aces, that's what we conflate with, oh, is this what
Mm,
sexual attraction is? No, it's not. It's aesthetic
hmm.
attraction, but that is that's the viewpoint, or that's the frame of reference you have. Oh, this person somehow looks beautiful, that I must be experience sexual attraction. No, there's a
Right.
very big difference. But for many aces, that's what their frame of reference is to understanding sexual
Yeah,
attraction.
and that is definitely a very silly difference to me as well, because like, yeah, I can see a person and aesthetically be like, yeah, they are like, they might be a beautiful person or
Hmm.
something, but like if I say that to like somebody else, will be like, oh, so you want, and I'm like, no, that has nothing to do with it. Like, I very frequently I would think people who are very traditionally attractive, or like the peak of that is like, i I do not like, I'm the complete opposite, because I mean, probably wrongly so, but I make assumptions about how uh, our relationship with them might be. Like, the values that we would have are probably different, because I don't personally value my aesthetic, and all of that to the point that somebody who really is like a perfect model or something like. So that is a complete difference. So there is no sexual attraction in that. I can appreciate that they are beautiful as a person, but there is no aspect of that that's like, I want any sort of relationship with that person.
No, exactly. But it unfortunately is not talked about enough.
Hmm.
That is a good point, Java for Jack. They mentioned Heartbreak High. There's a canon asexual character. They don't dive too deep into how he feels, but very much similar to how Hugster Duke described it. So are they like a sex repulse ace then, Java for Jack? Yeah, sex averse, sex repulsed. Then you've got the Todd Chavez from I think BoJack Horseman's an interesting one,
Mm-hmm.
because Todd
Yep.
Chavez actually, there's a whole arc to Todd's asexuality and developing this ace dating app. And so they actually spend time in actually exploring his asexuality to some degree that many other
Right.
shows don't. It's just, oh, they're
Right.
asexual and that's it. They're
Yeah.
very one dimensional. So I know that a
Right.
lot of ace folks appreciate the fact that BoJack Horseman actually explores
Hmm.
his asexuality and the struggle that he has in trying to come to grips with it, more
Yeah.
so than many
Definitely.
other shows do.
Totally agree.
But as we've said, there's just not enough of those examples, fortunately.
Not at all.
The best um, the best obviously representation comes from the small independent things. I know that we chatted with Katrina and Catherine
Mhm.
from a
Yep.
rom-com a little while back. Very excited that that is about to come out in the next couple of weeks, hopefully.
Ooh, exciting.
I don't know the exact date. I don't know if it's been mentioned yet, but they're hoping to release a rom-com, which is a platonic meet cute that takes place in Iceland during a winter storm and explores many of the the awkward feelings and situations that A-spec folks have been in when
Right.
attraction comes into play with
Right.
other folks maybe being attracted to them, or other folks talking about it. So I think there's some really neat representation that is present in that short film that I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, I remember that episode, and I definitely want to catch that.
So it's coming out Pride Month, so June, not too
Oh,
long,
let's
not too
go.
far away. Excited for it.
Oh yeah.
Heck yeah, also a non-binary character, Java for Jack. Always love to see our non-binary rep.
Oh yeah. So I don't want to take the question from you because I'm excited to jump into the next
Absolutely.
one.
Jump. So which one do you want to talk about? Uh,
7.
7? Okay.
Well, I
So
think that's
building
on
on
here.
the themes of allonormativity, and amatonormativity, how does your lived experience, uh, how has your lived experience influenced the relationships you've been in? And then building on that, what have you learned from being in relationships about your identity?
And that is so interesting, especially to because it seems like kind of in reverse uh, for how it all went. Because my demisexuality definitely influenced the arc of all of the relationships that I've had in the past. But I didn't truly understand the impact it had until I was way far removed from them. But then being able to look at them and understand like why they went a certain way or what was the cause of all of those things in a way that it kind of like put the pieces back together in like, well, why didn't I want this, or why is that, like, why did a relationship fail, or like, am I truly going to be able to like find somebody to who will really understand me? But um in like learning through that and then being able to looking at OkCupid and seeing demisexuality, then being able to take that lens and examine my relationships in the past, um, really pinpointed like what I need. Because I felt misunderstood in the relationships, but I may have thought that it was a misunderstanding uh, of a certain aspect of my personality, but it wasn't that. It was a complete lack of understanding about my attraction, both from my perspective and their perspective, um, which also helped me appreciate that that must be weird for somebody else in a relationship with somebody that seemed to be an allo relationship up to a certain point and then just changed into something incredibly different. And I now know why that happened, and it explains so much. But like also to that person, that must have been such a drastic and unsettling change. But so it really has helped put into perspective my history, but also like how to find what I need going forward.
So true. And I know I can totally, my experience is different, obviously, but I've come to learn a lot about my own identity from trying to be in relationships myself.
Hmm.
Trying that dating game, wondering, what is the, why do people, why do dating apps exist? Do I just not care enough? Attempting to
Hmm.
do the online dating and being like, yeah, cool, I could be friends with you, but I don't want anything more. And then,
Right.
attempting to be in this, my quote, one capital R romantic relationship and realizing, whoa, like that's not actually what happened there, but I
Right.
maybe misunderstood it. And I
Hmm.
really, looking back on this, have come to understand my identity. But if it wasn't
Hmm.
for these experiences, I don't think I would have ever come to that realization like I have now.
Yep. And this is it's one of my favorite stories of mine to tell about being demisexual before I knew I was. And I know Pixel enjoys this story. My wife absolutely loves this story, and it's not a specific one because this unfortunately happened many times. But I like to tell it because ace folks tend to relate to this to some extent. But multiple times in my life, I would maybe, be at a party or be drinking or spending some time with somebody that maybe I was even attracted to in some aspect. But then, the night goes on. We end up going either to my room, their room, and that's where it changes into a demisexual story because in my brain, the attraction to do anything more than that, like I'm still learning this person, right? I don't know that because I don't have this framework in my brain yet, but that's how it's working. Um, so I'm in this room with this person. They definitely have some sort of expectations. I'm the man, so as someone mentioned earlier, we're also expected to be the aggressor. So me being the aggressor meant that we would get into the bed, and I wouldn't I think it's way too forward to be sexual or something with that before I'm romantically and sexually attracted. I would keep my jeans on and just be like, okay, it's time. We've come back to this room so that we can enjoy just a night of sleeping together. And I would get into the bed with my jeans on, leaving them wondering what just happened. And that that wasn't a one-time thing. That happened multiple times. My lucky wife here, even I got into the bed with her with jeans on once. So, yep. She did tell me to take them off. But yep, Titan's belt. Exactly. Don't worry, nothing's getting out of here. But that now in being able to look back, I'm incredibly embarrassed, incredibly amused, but also everything makes so much more sense. I know
Absolutely.
why that happened. And
Absolutely.
I love telling that story to those who might relate.
It's a great story, and really it really speaks very much to the Demi experience. Absolutely.
Hmm. Yeah, so what movie do you want to watch? Why are you taking off your clothes? Exactly.
I didn't know that Netflix and chill meant something else. I literally thought it was just, let's watch some Netflix together.
Who's that
And bring a sweater.
It's Pikachu! It's Clefairy!
Right. So that, yes, it has been so rewarding to now have that perspective and to understand. So, yep.
Definitely. And thank you again, Duke, to for the gift sub to Java for Jack. Yes, absolutely. Getting invited to your first Netflix and chill. When I first heard the term, I literally thought it was, oh yeah, let's go watch some Netflix together.
Oh my God.
It
I
definitely doesn't mean that.
completely relate to that and to Pixel, like, because if we're watching a movie and we're not in a committed relationship, so we haven't had sex yet, you said, come over and let's watch a movie. I'm here to watch the movie. I'm here to see what's going on and have some popcorn because I love popcorn. Day old popcorn is the best treat ever. But
Mhm.
anyway, that's what I'm there for. And so if you start doing anything else, where are your pants going?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Maybe
Uh-huh.
some garlic bread as well, just to throw the
Ooh,
meme in
delicious.
there.
Yeah, right? Garlic bread and some cake.
Exactly.
Uh,
Chris
Korean culture,
Hangry.
would you like to
Yeah.
come over for ramen?
Hell yeah.
Yes, I do.
I love ramen. That's too bad. I mean, I totally would come over and eat some ramen, and it would go no further than that. But that is a really interesting one that would have gone way
And,
over my head. That's for sure.
right. And I love Pixel. It's strip trivia, but you strip before. There's not when you get something wrong. You just strip before, I guess. I don't know. I've not had that one. It's hilarious. And see, these are the representations that should be in media, right?
Exactly.
Because how this is engaging. This is amusing. And this is so real. Like a lot of the ace people that I talk to have experiences very much like this, and this is a happy and healthy way to show that.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
So do you want to talk about Ace Pride and what it means?
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
So what does Ace and Arrow Pride mean to me? Um, it's exactly why I'm here, and I've been excited to be on this podcast. And as there's room, definitely hope to come on more because it is so important. What you do is so important. The questions that you ask, the knowledge that you have. It is Ace and Arrow Pride because it is being visible and relatable to people who have these shared experiences, but also to people who have these experiences but don't have the lens for them, as we've said. Like this is the media that is accurately representing us. There Hollywood isn't doing it, and for the most part, non-indie shows aren't doing it. So it is very important to have these conversations, to talk like this, to share these experiences, so that somebody watching or hearing could be like, wait, wait a second. This could be their OK Cupid moment where they see demisexual for the first time, where maybe they've heard the terms but they didn't apply it to themselves because they didn't hear it in the right context. And so that's being proud of my identity is you know being confident in who I am, in how it is different than allosexual relationships, um, even when my my marriage is allo presenting and stuff. It's important to keep my identity because even I can feel that way. I think somebody way earlier said like ace people finding themselves not queer enough. Not queer, not queer enough, or something like that. Like, why are we a part of that? But it is so important, and it is so relatable and whatnot. To even though I am married and have a great relationship that, for all intents and purposes, appears like an allosexual relationship, to continue to hold my identity, to continue to express it and explore it, because even in my marriage, it shows up in plenty of dimensions. And yeah, so that's that's what it means to me.
Absolutely. Absolutely well said. And this is why I do this myself. This is why I love to hold the spaces I do, locally, running a support group, because those spaces just don't exist, you know,
Right.
in society. There's not enough
Yeah.
representation. So if I can create that space, that's rewarding to me.
Yeah, and it has definitely helped me on my journey, watching your podcast and listening and meeting you and talking to you. Like it's definitely helped me, even though I might seem so confident in it now. It's because of things like this and the fruities and all of the ace people that I've gotten to meet and talk to, because it's all so unique, and we're all on these little different parts of this 3D spectrum of asexuality and aromanticism, but it is so important to coordinate and see how it's different, because it's not the same for me as it is for anybody else, but it helps me to learn exactly where I am, and that's so
Mhm.
important.
Absolutely. And if it wasn't for the Aces in STEM Discord, in my late 20s, early 30s, I don't know if I would have ever gotten there. Um,
Right.
and I certainly wouldn't be here today doing this podcast, certainly not. And
Right.
if it wasn't for that support group I initially joined locally when it was, independent of the organization that I now work with, I wouldn't have learned the material that I've built this podcast around.
Right.
Many of the discussions that we've had in these groups, I don't go into them obviously for confidentiality reasons, but those discussions have informed a lot of the topics I bring to the podcast.
Right. Yeah, and that's so important. And I agree with Pixel. You're doing amazing
Yeah.
work, and
Oh, thank you.
um, also Duke. I'm also so glad, and that's exactly why I like to do that. Because I mean, I love talking about these experiences to anybody that will listen, but that I can wash away a little bit of that imposter syndrome, because that I think that's such a common feeling for people like us is the imposter syndrome, because we're adjacent and everybody wants us to be in the same box as them. We're not. There are definitely many of similarities that we've talked about in all of this, but like, we are an identity, and it is valid and important to understand how that works, because
Mhm.
understanding yourself, your needs, all of those things are just so important to healthy relationships, both romantically and platonically.
Absolutely. So, so true. I do want to share something that Duke shared with me, and it's
Right?
actually a content creator who goes by the name Fluently Aspec, is an Arrow Ace content creator and middle school teacher, and he created a blog about his, the first asexual representation that he came across, and which is, he talks about the fact that Todd Chavez and those don't really never spoke to him, but
Hmm.
another character, I think, is it Spooner in DC's Legend of Tomorrow and the Arrowverse does. And so I will share this blog with folks. It's I'm gonna read this one because I haven't had a chance to read it yet. But this looks like a really interesting one to read. So this is Fluently Aspec um, blog. Sorry.
I'm leaving this with a whole lot of tabs.
Yeah. And imposter syndrome is so common. I feel it all the
Mhm.
time when I'm sitting here on the podcast. I'm like, do I have the knowledge? Do I have the experiences? Do I have the bandwidth to be able to do this every day that I sit here on the podcast? It may
Mhm.
not come across to you, but every time I start the podcast, I'm like, do I know about this topic enough to be able to hold a podcast on it? That certainly
Right.
goes, through my head all the time.
Yeah. No, I get that, especially because they're all such unique experiences and identities, because
Hmm.
it's such a complex spectrum or spectrums
Hmm.
to be on, that yeah, it's tough.
I agree with Duke in saying, the gaze to encompass all the 2SLGTI plus identities, and it's not accurate. While
Right.
it's maybe the most common representation of the queer community in media, it doesn't at all represent asexuality. It doesn't represent gender identity and all the other aspects of the queer community that are very important, vibrant, and valid parts of it.
Right. 100%.
It's been such an amazing pleasure to chat with you today, and
Heck yeah.
you know, chat about your experiences to coming to figure out demisexuality. Obviously, I can certainly relate to the fact that it took me a long time to figure out my own identity as well. I have come to learn over the years just how many folks didn't figure out until they were around 30 or they're around. It's more
Right.
common than you think.
Yeah. Which is why it's just so important to do this. Yeah. Um, right. And why I'm so excited to have been able to get on here. Yeah, it really validates a lot of things, helps me with my imposter syndrome,
Hmm.
and definitely I hope that I continue to help others with that.
Absolutely.
So yes, thank you so much for the opportunity.
And I absolutely love your the story that you've shared both on the your own streams as well as the one that you shared towards the end here about keeping your jeans on.
Yeah.
I absolutely love
Uh,
that story, and I think it's a great reminder that it is such a diverse spectrum.
I need a jeans emote is what I
Yes,
need.
you do. I want that. I want the jeans emote. I need it. Thank you so much again. Is there anything
Yeah.
else that we missed that you want to talk about at the end here?
No, I think I've been able to cram all of that in. I guess the only thing that I didn't get to was I didn't get to talk about just how amazing and wonderful my wife is and how
Aw.
she's really helped and supported me through this journey and everything. But yeah, well, maybe if you have a podcast about ace identities in marriages, then I'll be able
Absolutely. I
to
would
talk
love
more about
to. I
her.
would love
But
to do that podcast for
yeah,
sure in the future. Absolutely. I'm always looking for more ideas and more topics to talk about. So always open
right.
suggestions from folks because I sometimes run out of ideas myself. Obviously I don't have all the experiences that fall under the ace and arrow spectrum,
Right.
so it's helpful to get different perspectives and different topic ideas.